heartfelt thanks to all of you for coming, especially that means dear Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. I seek your blessing so that I can speak something worthwhile on a topic which I speak primarily for my own application. So the topic is from Anartha Nivritti to Artha Pravritti, and we have 4 sessions. So I'll be taking 4 sessions on each of these themes. One session on Anartha, second on Nivritti, third on Artha, and fourth on Pravritti. So we try to analyze each of them step by step way, and to conclude towards the Artha Pravritti. Krishna is the Paramartha, is the supremely meaningful reality. And Artha Pravritti is attraction towards Krishna. And Artha Pravritti is detachment from worldly things. So Anartha Nivritti is also one stage in bhakti which often lasts for quite a long time during our purificatory process. We'll discuss that also. So I tend to speak a little fast in between. So if any of you find that I'm speaking fast, please just raise your hand and let me know. So I'll slow down at that time. Sometimes I start with I have a sticky on my computer saying speak slow. Then I start speaking fast. I forget to look at it also. I was in Los Angeles last year after I went from here. And Amiyalas Maharaj attended my class. And afterwards I asked him any suggestions. So he gave me a card. Slow down. So keep this card with you always. So of course, unfortunately, I lost that card. But I kept that instruction in mind. So feel free to just tell me, especially sometimes when I'm speaking a long sentence, the last part of the sentence I just go fast. I'll be happy to repeat that if it's unclear anytime. So let's begin with Anartha. Yeah. Who's operating this? Where is it? Okay, sorry. This one. Okay. So now Anartha, let's begin with semantics. The word Artha has 3 different meanings. Artha can mean meaning. What is the Artha of this? In Sanskrit we have some synonym that is called a Shabda Artha. So Shabda Artha is what is the meaning of this word? So one meaning of the word Artha is meaning. Another meaning of the word Artha is also purpose. Krishna is meant to be a supreme Artha. He is the supreme purpose of our life. And Artha also means money or value. Like we have Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Artha is money or anything of dealing with monetary matters. And in India, the finance minister is called as the Artha Mantri. The Artha is finance. So when we take it from this perspective, Anartha refers to that which has no meaning, no purpose, and no value. So now, in the Anarthas, usually they're analyzed in different ways, but the Bhagavad Gita talks about the 3 gates to hell: Trividam Narkasyedam, Dwaram Nashanam Atmana, Kama Krodha Satha Lobha, Tasmad Etat Trayam Tejeta. So Krishna talks about Kama, Krodha and Lobha, lust, anger and greed. Often we talk about the 6 enemies. So added to these 3 are envy, and then illusion, lust, anger, envy, pride and illusion. So these can be referred to as anarthas. And also Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Bhajan Rahasya as well as in Harinam Chintamani talks about anarthas in Islam in different ways. He talks about misconception, which can also be called as anarthas. So the misunderstanding our own identity, misunderstanding God's position, misunderstanding our relationship with Him. So anarthas, in terms of specific analysis, they can be analyzed in different ways. The important thing is that more than the analytical specifics, we can focus on the principle. The principle is that which actually has no ultimate meaning or value or purpose, but that catches us, that captivates us, that is Anartha. And from the perspective of Krishna Bhakti, anything apart from Krishna, anything Krishnetara, anything which takes us away from Krishna, which we do not see in connection with Krishna, that will be an anartha. The Bhagavatam in the Chatushloki defines Maya as Rute Artham Yat Pratiyeta Na Pratiyet Chatmani Vidyad Atmano Maya Yatha Bhaso Yatha Tamaha. That anything disconnected from Krishna, anything Rute Artham Yat Pratiyeta, the word Artha comes over there also, that which seems meaningful, no pratiyet chatmani, but we do not see any connection of it with Atmani. There the word Atma refers to the Supreme Lord Krishna, absolute truth. Prate artham yat pratiyet, na pratiyet chatmani. This is all, pratiyet is appearance. That which appears meaningful, but that which doesn't appear to have any connection with Krishna. Tam vidyad atmano maya. That is actually known as Maya. And Maya attacks us, that is illusion which attacks us through various misconceptions. So the anarthas are those which disconnect our consciousness from Krishna. And from that perspective, actually for us in the conditioned state, anartha appears like artha. It appears to be very meaningful, very valuable. And in fact, that becomes the purpose of life for people. Say somebody who has become an addict, somebody has become an alcoholic, then they sometimes value their alcohol so much that they are ready to risk their job, they are ready to hurt their family members, they are ready to ruin their health. They just get completely overwhelmed by it. So that which is actually valueless, that appears to be not just valuable, but supremely valuable. And Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita when he says in 16.11 that Kamopabhoga parama etavad iti nishchitaha. He says Kam upabhoga, the enjoyment of worldly pleasures, parama. Parama is, this is Prabhupada translates that this is the prime necessity of life. They feel that gratifying the senses is the prime necessity of life. And on that etavad iti nishchitaha. Certain about it, as certain it Prabhupada says. So one European thinker, he said that the problem with the world is that the foolish are confident, the wise are doubtful, and the foolish are cocksure. So those who are trying to pursue God, they had doubts. Does God really exist? Does God really care for me? Will I really attain God? So they have doubts. But those who are in illusion, those actually foolish, they are completely confident. They are cocksure. If I just get this, then I am going to enjoy life. So that is the power of illusion by which that which is anartha appears to be artha. That which is actually having very little meaning or value, that which is having very little meaning or value, that appears to be extremely meaningful and supremely valuable. Now how does that happen? Chasing illusion becomes so familiar. You just get once, twice, thrice, and as we keep doing it, it appears to be reality, the only reality. So chasing illusion means that, as I said, for a person who becomes addicted, say, to alcohol, at that time, that becomes what they live for. Right? From the moment they wake up till they sleep, they're thinking, when can I drink next time? When can I drink next time? So the specific illusions that we may chase may be different. But that becomes the driving purpose of people's lives. And thus that becomes the reality for them. So anartha, it is when the anartha, now here there's a point which comes up that when we talk about, say, lust or anger or greed, now are they just misconceptions which we as conscious beings have, or are they objective things that are present inside us? That means when a person, say, gets angry, so is anger just an emotion that we experience sometime, or is anger some objective reality that exists within us? Actually, it is both. Yes, anger is an emotion that we experience, and so that sometimes I feel angry. So that means that is the time when I am getting anger. But at the same time, that anger is not just an emotion, it is also, we could say, a disposition or an inclination that is formed in the mind. That's why when we talk about this in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, for he's talking about karma, which can be translated as lust specifically, it can also be understood as any self-centered desire. So he says that it is located. Krishna talks about it as having objective reality. He says, Indriyani manobuddhir asyadhishthanam uchyate. It's situated in the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So, to reconcile these two, that on one side, it is, say, anger or pride or lust. This is the emotion that we feel, but it's also an object that is present within us. And the reconciliation of these two is that the reconciliation is that it's an object that is present within us, and when it is present, the emotion is felt more quickly, more intensely. Say, for example, a child who is below puberty, then for that person, lust is not present inside. It is there in a dormant state in the mind, but at that time it is not activated. Some people get angry about some things, and they don't get angry about other things at all. So anger is an anartha that is present within us, and when we get angry, at that time that anartha makes its presence manifest. So it is not just an emotion that we feel, and we can say, don't get angry. I will not get angry. Yes, that as far as the emotion is concerned, we can try to resist that emotion. And we need to do that. But at the same time, because it's an objective reality, that is, it's an object that is present within us, it will have its influence on us. And so if anger is present within someone, then for that person, resisting the anger becomes much more difficult. Say, to give an example, going back to the example of alcoholism. Now, we could say anybody can get the desire to drink alcohol. But in an alcoholic, what has happened? The conditioning is there. That means there is not just the desire that they feel to drink. It is also that there is that inclination that is present. And that inclination is something very strong. So, I'll be using two metaphors throughout this class, throughout these 4 sessions. So one metaphor is the metaphor of a floor. So if the floor here is inclined in a particular way, then as soon as water falls on the floor, then the water is naturally going to flow this way. And if I say no, the water should not flow this way. Now, if I am in a particular house and somebody is in another house, in my house the floor is not inclined like this. In somebody else's house the floor is inclined like this. So as soon as the water falls in my house, it will not get flow like this. But when the water falls in somebody else's house, immediately starts flowing this way. So it flows because there is an inclination of the flow like that. So say for example, somebody is short-tempered. Anger is an emotion that everyone can get at different times. But some people who are short-tempered, they become verbally abusive, they may assault physically, they just explode at times. So in their case, we could say their mental floor is inclined in that direction. And so there is now when water falls anywhere, it's going to flow in some direction. So when any of us is provoked, there is some emotion that comes up because of that provocation. But if the mental floor is inclined in a particular way, and the water is flowing in that direction, is natural. And unless something else is done, it is inevitable. So the anartha is what we could say anartha reshapes our mental floor, so that our consciousness naturally flows in that direction. And in this way, when we keep chasing illusions, when we keep chasing a particular object, then the consciousness naturally gravitates towards that object, towards that indulgence. And that's how the anartha appears to be like artha. That which is actually meaningless, but because the floor has become inclined in that direction, so we just naturally think about it, and we think about it as very valuable, very desirable, very meaningful. This is how the anartha works. Now, I talk about chasing illusions. Now, what is the illusion here? The illusion is that once we indulge in something, we are initially allured by pleasure. Oh, I'll get so much pleasure over it. But after some time, it is not so much that getting it gives us pleasure. Rather, not getting it causes pain, causes distress. So alcoholics, if they are trying to recover from their alcoholism, and when they relapse not because they want to get high, but it's just they want to feel normal. So that means, initially, say, going back to the mental floor example, initially I thought, I wanted the water to flow in this way. I wanted the water to flow, maybe for whatever reason. We thought this object is desirable, I want to enjoy it. And we indulge in it. But after we indulge in it a few times, the material pleasures, but they always have this law of diminishing returns. So if somebody offers us a gulab jamun, first gulab jamun, delicious. Second gulab jamun, okay, good. Third gulab jamun. Somebody offers 5 gulab jamuns, 10 gulab jamuns. You also take something. At that time, it is not because we are concerned about them, but because now it is law of diminishing returns. I don't want so much though. So that way, over a period of time, the pleasure goes down by repeated indulgence. But because the habit has been created, the mental floor is inclined in a particular way. So then, not ensuring that the water doesn't flow in that direction requires effort. So for us, once we get hooked to something, not doing it causes agitation. So we think that actually by doing this I am getting pleasure and I can't live without this pleasure. But quite often what is happening is, it's not that indulging in it gives pleasure, rather it is not indulging in it that causes agitation. And when we indulge, we just get some relief from it. And that relief lasts for some time. So the illusion is that we think it is actually pleasure. Srila Prabhupada writes in one purport that in sense enjoyment, most of the pleasure is in the anticipation of the pleasure. In the anticipation, yes, I'll get it. But actually, it doesn't come much. Now, in today's world, there are anarthas which are always there in material existence, but the anarthas are aggravated. How are they aggravated? Because the objects that allure us they are advertised, they are glamorized, and they are presented to us in a far more aggressive way than before. In surgery, there is what they call as some non-intrusive surgery or intrusive surgery. Now, intrusive surgery means put some object in the body, cut the body, and that way they try to heal the body. But it's intrusive means it comes in. So the anarthas, the sense objects which allure us, they are actually quite intrusive in today's culture. They just intrude into our path. Even if we want to live without getting entangled, but still the intrusion keeps happening more and more. And because of this intrusion, resisting becomes even more difficult. Now, if you consider this is the sense and this is the sense object. And basically the pleasure is when the sense object comes to the sense. I want to own something, I want to eat something, I want to touch something, I want to exhibit that I have this, I possess this. So now the sense and the sense object that is there. Now when we get the sense object, we get some pleasure. So today's world, what happens is, the sense objects, the best sense objects from all over the world are visible very easily for us. And not only that, in many ways, they seem to be very easily accessible. So for example, if you consider greed, then we may just want to purchase things. So I want to buy this, I want to buy that. Just like there's alcoholism, there is an addiction called as shopaholism. Shopaholism is where people are just addicted to shopping. They shop till you drop. So now, when people shop like this, what is actually happening? The objects are so easily accessible. And you can just go to one supermarket and you can buy whatever you want. And many things that you don't even want. Just, there is a famous owner of a CEO of a company. He said that, if we wait for people to come to ask us, or to tell us we want this, he says, we'll be waiting forever. Our goal is that we create desires in people. Our goal is that we have to create the desires in people. And how do you create desires? By glamorization, by advertising. One of my friends is in an advertising company, and he told me that for many of the big companies, the advertising, the promotion budget is several times more than the production budget. So the promotion budget. Now, for example, especially there are medicines for mental health, say antidepressant pills or something like that. Now, in these cases, if we have some physical disease, then the medicines are very easily, we need them and we take them. In the case of mental health, the medicines are enormously advertised. And that's how people feel. Now, sometimes people can have some serious brain issues because of which they may need some mental health medicines. But quite often, this is a normal human life's ups and downs come up. And for everything, people take a pill. So this is a need which is created. Prabhupada talks in the 7.16 purport about 7.15 purport about the artificially created needs. So anartha means what? That the sense objects are exposed more and more to us, and then desire is created for us. The desire is first the sense objects become visible, then they are made accessible. So and then we feel that they are desirable. So first is visible is through the advertisements. So the accessibility comes through the whole system of having easy money through credit cards, through loans. So it becomes accessible. And then when the desire is created within us, then we get caught, we get deluded. So the anarthas have always been there in the world. Lust, anger, greed. But in Kali Yuga, quite often indulgence in the anarthas is made much, much easier than in the past. So the visibility, their accessibility, and their desirability, it all appears to be much, much more. And thus people get trapped up. And when this happens, the Bhagavatam uses the example of how a spider catches something else in its prey, but what is that? A moth? Butterfly. Something which gets the food out of it, and it gets trapped in its own hole, in a cocoon. Caterpillar? Now, which is the entity that gets trapped in its own cocoon? Silkworm, silkworm. Silkworm. So silkworm gets trapped in its own cocoon. So like that, the desires come out of us and they trap us sometimes. So now, we recently had a storm, and when a storm comes, people normally go out of the way. They don't want to be in the storm, part of the storm. But if somebody voluntarily or intentionally puts themselves in the way of a storm, then they just get swept away. So Krishna also says, Indriyana vicharatam yan mano anuvidhyate tadasya harati pragya vayur navunamvasi. In 2.67 he says that when the senses contemplate on the sense objects, then the storm of desire is created within us. And when that storm of desire is created, it just sweeps away the intelligence. It sweeps away the person. So when we know that the storm is going to come, we get out of the way of the storm. So like that, the first step in dealing with anartha is that once we know that this is the path where there is danger, there is temptation, I'll get captivated, then get out of the way. So wherever there is, we all have our vulnerabilities. Wherever it is that we know we are vulnerable, we just get out of the way. We put ourselves in the way of the storm, then we will be swept away. And the difference, however, is that somehow normally when a storm comes, we feel there is danger. But when the storm of desire comes, it appears as if there is pleasure. So because of that promise of pleasure, we go toward the storm. But then that pleasure is a little bit initially there, but afterwards as the desire catches us, then we also get swept away. We often end up doing things which we never planned to do. We never intended to do. But this is that today the storms, they can be very easily induced in our consciousness. And that's why we need to be careful. Now, anartha. So now, take a couple of more points and we can have some discussion or some questions. So quite often when we indulge in something, sometimes we may do something intentionally, sometimes something may just be unintentional. So there are two situations. One is where there are materialistic people who just desire to enjoy. They want to accumulate things. They want, if somebody's proud. I read one book and it was astonishing. I never seen a book like this. In the acknowledgements, he says, the first acknowledgement is to me. Because I worked so hard to write this book. So, now obviously everybody knows that you wrote the book, but acknowledgement is to acknowledge others, not yourself. So, some people are proud and they delight in their pride. Others are proud, but they understand, I should not just show off things. They're trying to resist the pride. The same with any anartha that we have, that we can be fighting it or we can be fueling it. So all of us, sometime or other, when we are battling with our anarthas, we will relapse. That's just the way we grow, even when we are trying to overcome it. So now when we relapse, sometimes it may be intentional, sometimes it may be unintentional. And when it's intentional, of course, even then, rectification and purification are possible. But how do we differentiate between what is intentional and what is unintentional? So broadly speaking, we can look at it before the event, just during the event and after the event. So if before the event there is preoccupation. Now if an alcoholic is alcoholic is trying to recover from alcoholism, and while trying to recover, they are going to some counselor, de-addiction counselor, and then they say, I really want to give this up. But then there's all this preoccupation. Hey, when can I drink? When can I drink? Now, as if we are attached, in one sense, the preoccupation with our attachment is definitely going to be there. But there will be preoccupation in terms of, I want to fight this, I don't want to do this, when can I do this? So if there is constant preoccupation in the sense that, when can I enjoy? That preoccupation indicates that what happens is intention. That's one indication. Then also, there is premeditation. Premeditation means that when the opportunity presents itself, one plans, okay, how can I do this in a way in which I'll not get caught? And one tries to do cover up. So before is this preoccupation, not for fighting, but for seeking an opportunity. Premeditation means planning in such a way that one doesn't get caught. And then rationalization means that even if one gets caught, one tries to, everybody's doing it. Why make us a big fuss about it? It just happens. It's just the way the world is. This is the way I am. We can make different rationalizations. So, Krishna several times in the Bhagavad Gita says, Mai arpita manobuddhir mami veshi samjaya. So, at a physical level, abstinences, we may need to do that. We need to do that, of course. But Krishna says we have to offer our mind and intelligence to it. So, if the mind is preoccupied, yes, this is I want to do this. When can I do this? And when there's premeditation. So, mind, we can say broadly that the mind is associated with preoccupation. It's desiring, fantasizing, seeking. And the intelligence is associated with preoccupation and premeditation and rationalization. Premeditation means we plan it in such a way that we are not detected. And even if we are, we rationalize. We try to defend ourselves. So of course, bhakti is so powerful that even if somebody is doing something intentionally, still that intention will also become purified over a period of time. But that may take a long time. So, going back to the metaphor of the floor, and when the water falls, naturally the water will flow in this direction. So now sometimes the water will just spill from my hand, the water starts flowing in that direction. But sometimes, I deliberately spill the water because I want to make the water go in that direction. They're two very different things. So similarly for us as seekers, there is time when we may do something which is undesirable, which is improper, but if it is just a one-time event. So for example, in the case of Ajamil, if we consider, was his lapse intentional or unintentional? What do you think? Unintentional? Okay, how many of you say unintentional? Yeah. Any other answers? Yeah, actually, it was unintentional the first time. When he actually saw that Shudrani and he started, he was just, that was completely unintentional. He was going for some religious purpose of getting firewood for his father, and he got caught at that time. He just got caught by that desire. But after that, if he starts rejecting his own wife, starts rejecting his parents, he starts living with her, at that time, others will have told him, you cannot do this. You should not be doing this. But he did not pay any attention at that time. So quite often, it is not the first mistake that gets us into trouble. It is what we do after the first mistake. For Ajamil, that particular lapse was unintentional. It happens. So the mind is very cunning. The mind says, you have fallen down, now fall down fully. So that way, when the first mistake happens, that's okay. It happens many times. But what do we do after that? And this is where we'll talk a little bit more later. But if we have association of devotees, if we have positive engagements, if we have positive responsibilities, then we don't have the time or the opportunity to perpetuate that mistake. So usually, for those who are trying to grow on the spiritual path, the first lapse is unintentional. The first lapse, firstly that happens is unintentional. But after that, if it continues, then that is quite often intentional. So similarly, if you consider Bharat Maharaj, for him, when he saw that baby deer flowing away in the water, at that time, to save that baby deer, there's nothing wrong in that. In fact, that's just natural compassion. But that was a good action. But after that, to think that, now I have to maintain this deer, that I am the maintainer of this deer, that thought, that was a mistake. That is where he got caught. So if you are going to think that I am the maintainer, then he had been the maintainer of a kingdom. He had been the maintainer of a family. He had already left that. There is a time in one's life when one has to play that role, but he had consciously chosen to give up that role. And now he was taking up another role of renunciate. So for him, the saving the deer was not the mistake. But what happened after that? He's thinking that I'll be the maintainer of the deer. That was the mistake. So usually it is, whenever some lapse happens, it usually goes from unintentional to intentional. When it is intentional, then it becomes much more difficult to overcome. Because at that particular time, it's our whole inner world is consumed by that particular craving, by that particular desire. And when the inner world is consumed, then it is not so easy to resist it, to overcome it.
Clear for the Facebook Live.
So now, redirection begins with realization. So Srila Prabhupada, when he was giving a talk to one of the first Rath Yatra festivals, he was giving a talk to some hippies. Most of that, there were people who would come to that program. And then he said that all of you are not much appreciated in America. You are considered hippies. He said, and you are considered frustrated people. Mr. Prabhupada said, but I appreciate you. Human life is meant to be frustrated. He says, only when there is frustration, then he says, there will be athato brahma jigyasa. Then we will inquire about spiritual. So all of us, in our life, at some time or the other, we get some experience that an anartha is an anartha. This is meaningless. Why am I doing this? shouldn't be doing this. What is the point of it all? So when is
Missing a T.
oh
Vent.
okay, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's, okay. Where's the PPT? There.
Need.
Okay,
Vent.
next.
Go ahead and fix it.
Yeah, I can fix it. Sorry. It's meant to be frustrated. Thank you. So actually for us, that in the commentary to Athato Brahma Jigyasa, Ramanacharya, the Vedanta Sutta gives almost 100-page commentary. And he analyzes what is it that begins the Brahma Jigyasa. Now, what is it that makes a soul start inquiring about the spiritual? And he gives various reasons for it. And one of the reasons is that one realizes that this world, whatever I am thinking is pleasurable, is not pleasurable. It is, I thought it will give me enjoyment, I tried so much, but it's not giving me the enjoyment that I want. So this realization, we all get it at times, but it doesn't last for long. Because the need, I talk about this more when we talk about nivritti, anartha nivritti. The moment of frustration, the moment of, that can be a moment when the redirection happens. If we can contemplate and then we can look for some other way in life. Otherwise, basically, if we consider our existence to be like a two-story building, there's material and there is spiritual. So when I don't get what I want at the first level of the house, then naturally, if I know that there is a second level, and I know that there will be a better happiness available, then I'll go there. But if that doesn't happen, then I'll just look somewhere else at the first level itself. So we don't get pleasure in one material object, and then we look for something else at the material level itself, again and again. So when this frustration happens, a lot of factors are there, but they're understanding that okay, there must be something more in my life, which I should look for. So most people, everybody experiences dissatisfaction at the material level. But most people look at the material level itself, at the same level. People seek more sense pleasure. Whereas we are meant to seek more than sense pleasure. More than sense pleasure, something more. Is there something more to life? And that inquiry can happen for different people at different times. So for that inquiry and for that redirection, there are broadly three factors. One is that one is frustrated with what is available at that floor. Second is one comes to know that there is a higher floor. And the third is somebody shows the way to the higher floor. So that means this will be I talked about two metaphors I'll be using. One is the floor, one is the inclined floor, and the second is like a two-story building. So this is the second metaphor, that at the material level there is frustration. That's the time when we start, I want something more in my life. So then that time, if I come to, so first is that I should be fed, there should be some frustration with disappointment, frustration, disillusionment with whatever we are getting at the material level. Then there has to be knowledge. There must be something more to life. There must be some other dimension of life. And then there also has to be a process which is given by some devotee. So when all these three come together, then we rise from the lower level of consciousness, from the material level to the spiritual level. So anartha is about, we're talking about at this stage, that which is meaningless. And we understand it, we recognize it to be meaningless. So the time when we realize this, that is actually important for us. And it is not that it is only one time. We all get realizations of this periodically. We have certain conceptions of this is important for me. I want to achieve this. And then I achieve it, and then there's nothing great about this. What is so great about this? So those moments are actually very important for us. But if we don't cherish them consciously, those moments of realization, then they will just pass away. And then again, we'll keep looking at the same level of reality. So at the present level of reality, at the present level of consciousness, we pursue certain things. And when we recognize whatever I'm pursuing here, this is not enough. Whenever we get that realization, if we cherish it, it will stay. Other than it will go away because some other temptation will come. Srila Prabhupada talks about this as Smashan Vairagya. Smashan Vairagya means somebody goes to a crematorium and they get some renunciation. Oh, this world is temporary, I have to seek something eternal. But then after they come out of the crematorium, they come back to their home, they go to their office and they forget it. So at that time, this doesn't mean if we contemplate that and then we cherish that. Cherish not in these moments of frustration are not something which we would like to naturally remember. But if they can prompt us towards redirection, then that can help us to move onwards in our life. So actually, when I do this seminar, we usually have some exercise where for 5 minutes we have paper and pen where devotees can write down their own experience. Don't have to share it with anyone, but just write down. So we may not be able to do that because we have just a short seminar, but this is something which you could yourself do later. Now, when was the time when whatever we thought of as anartha was an artha, we realized this is not really artha. This is an anartha. I thought this was so important. It is not that important. There must be something more. So those moments of realization, they are very valuable for us. And when those moments come up, then if we remember that in the future the same temptation will come, I'm not going to go in that direction because that remembrance will be there. So that which we thought of as an artha, but we realized it to be an artha. So the experience can be very valuable. So for me, since my childhood, I had 2 or 3 main dreams. First was as academic, I wanted to become a topper. I wanted to be number 1 in my class. Second is that I wanted to become an author. Third is I wanted to become a speaker. So, by Krishna's mercy, all 3 were fulfilled. And in all 3 I was frustrated. In the sense that the desire was fulfilled, but I realized that there was no fulfillment in that. So, there's a prominent newspaper in India, Times of India. It's considered the world's number 1 newspaper. So there is a speaking tree column over there, which is a spiritual column. And since my childhood, I used to read that column. So I used to think one day I'll write in this column. But I had no idea what to write. Then when I got introduced to Krishna consciousness, then by Prabhupada's mercy, there's so much philosophy that is there, so much wisdom. So I started writing articles. And then once I just sent an article to, I found their editor's address, I sent an article. And they have a system where normally in the active world, if you send an article, they'll acknowledge we have received it, we are reviewing it. And after reviewing, they will give some comments. But in this case, they have no system like that. So I thought probably they must get hundreds of articles. And after that, they thought that they don't respond. So I got no response at all. And then one day a devotee told me, he said, your article has come in speaking tree. I said, what? I was very surprised. Then he called and saw the paper. I was initially so elated. And I thought, yes, now my childhood dream has come true. I was so happy. And then I was in the ashram, and then I told some other devotees, you know what? My article has come in speaking tree. So another brahmachari asked, how can a tree speak? So I was taken aback at that time. But then it struck me that I'm thinking this is so great. But for somebody else, they don't even know what it is. So, although there was initially disappointment with that particular devotee, why are you doing this? But then afterwards it struck me, okay, when I was writing the article, actually it was so absorbing. Okay, maybe I can write this like this thought flows like this point is phrased like this. But after the article came out in the paper, I said, okay, I found that I was more absorbed and fulfilled when I was writing the article than when I was seeking recognition for having the article published. So it's not that I'm free from the desire for recognition, but at least that was an experience for me that in Krishna Bhakti, the results are not as important as the process itself. And if you're absorbed, then an absorption is far more fulfilling than the recognition. So naturally, as a human being, we crave for some appreciation, some recognition. But then that may come, that may not come. And that is not as important. You don't mind think that that's a big artha. That's what I want. People should appreciate. But actually I find that this was much more fulfilling for me. So now when I write articles, I even now when I write articles, I post on Gita Daily every day. So I look forward to somebody sending a comment. Somebody appreciative comment, non-appreciative comment. But that doesn't matter. I realize that is just going to come and go. But the 1.5, 2 hours I write every day, that is the time I look forward to in my whole day. This is what I want to do. So over a period of time, for us, the artha is Krishna. And the service to Krishna, the absorption in Krishna, that is what is artha. And there are many other things connected with Krishna, connected with our service to Krishna also. They seem to be like artha, but they are not artha. That we get the realization. So I'll come back to this theme in the last class. We can be in Krishna consciousness, or we can be around Krishna consciousness. We can be around Krishna consciousness means that we can be connected with Krishna, but we're thinking of everything other than Krishna while being connected externally with Krishna. So even in our service, even in our devotional life, we all have certain conceptions of what is artha. And if we get an experience that this is not really what is artha, the real artha is Krishna, then that experience is something very valuable for us. And by cherishing that, we can have that redirection beginning with realization. So I'll summarize. So I talked today about anartha. Anartha is that which is no value, no meaning, no purpose. But it appears very meaningful, very valuable, and it becomes the driving purpose of our life. That's how the anartha catches us. So there can be specific analysis. We can have the 6 anarthas: lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion. Specific analysis can be different, but the universal principle is that anything which distracts us from the supreme artha, from the paramartha, Krishna, that is an anartha. And the anartha, like say anger, is not just a feeling that we have. It's also an object. It's a thing which is situated in our mind and which prompts us much more to have that feeling. So it's like a floor. If the water is flowing, the floor is inclined, the water will naturally flow. So when we indulge in an activity repeatedly, then our mental flow becomes inclined in that direction. And naturally, involuntarily almost, our thoughts go in that direction. So initially, we indulge because we feel there will be pleasure over there. But afterwards, we indulge not so much because we get pleasure, but because not doing it causes agitation, causes distress, causes pain, causes torment. So once we understand this, actually I'm not getting pleasure over here, then we may look for something here. The anarthas, the more we indulge, that the more we feel that emotion, the more we act on that emotion, that object, that thing inside us, the anartha becomes stronger. The floor becomes more and more inclined. And to deal with the anartha, we need to move forwards, first of all, to recognize that this is an anartha. I'm thinking this is meaningful, but actually it is not really meaningful. It is not at all valuable. And the moment when we get that realization, that is valuable. If we cherish that, then that can prompt us towards some redirection. So we talked about how there's a lower level of a house and a higher level. So material level is the lower level. And most people in today's world, there's so much aggressive propaganda of the sense objects. And even if one sense object doesn't satisfy, another. And just stay trapped like that. But if firstly, this doesn't satisfy, and then there's a highest level to this building, and this is the stairway to go up. Somebody points at this. So if we have that some amount of disillusionment in the material, some amount of knowledge of the spiritual, and somebody who shows us the path from the material to the spiritual, then the realization can lead to redirection. And the moments when we get this realization, this whatever I thought of artha is not really artha, that realization is very valuable. So by cherishing it, whenever that temptation comes again, we can reject that and persevere in our redirection. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments?
Have a microphone.
Yes.
Yes.
I've been having a lot of realizations recently about how anarthas cannot be resisted. And in the Shastra, I've been noticing how Haridas Thakur defeated the prostitute, but he never said no to her. And how when Pralambasura entered the pastimes of the cowherd boys, Krishna immediately wanted to kill him, but externally he acted as his friend. And in the Gita he says, what can repression accomplish? And the Buddhists also say, desire nothing, resist nothing. And I wonder if you can comment on that, the tensing up and the rejection of the non-acceptance of an artist. It doesn't, in my life, it has not worked.
Yeah. So saying no to desires doesn't work. Like say the Buddhists also say that desire nothing and then renounce nothing. Resist nothing. Yeah, actually this nivritti is what I'm going to talk elaborately in the second part of the class, anartha nivritti. Yes, if our focus is on saying no to something, it just doesn't work. For example, if I know there is some electric current in this object, I can decide I will not touch this. But when it comes to at the mental level, to not think of something is also to think of that thing. Isn't it? So I can physically not touch something, but if alcoholic thinks, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to drink. The mind is so cunning, the mind will just delete the not. I'm going to drink. So if I'm thinking I'm not going to drink, and I'm still thinking of drinking only. So what happens is, if we just focus on this dynamic of this of indulgence or resistance, if this is the only two we are thinking about, then resistance is very difficult to sustain. But then we need, that's why I talk about the higher level of the building. That's transcendence. So transcendence means when we become absorbed in something higher, then we can go beyond this. Now specifically, which anartha, how one goes beyond, that will vary from person to person. So whether it is whichever particular anartha is, what particular desire is. So sometimes the purification may just be by understanding, I say no to it. Sometimes the purification may be that I understand it, but there is some regulated indulgence. And then after that experience, there can be renunciation. So the point is well taken that we can't wish away or deny our anarthas. If I have anger, and if I suppress that anger, it's not going to go away. I suppress once, twice, thrice, 5 times. Afterwards, it comes out like a volcano. All that accumulated anger. So we can't suppress it. We have to, normally we think of expressing or suppressing. But there is a third option, that is processing. We have to appropriately process it. And so processing involves acknowledging that it exists and I have to deal with it. And somebody who does not have that particular anartha, they will say, why are you so short-tempered? They will just not understand us. So it can be, the specific anartha can vary from person to person. And how that person will process it, that's up to them. And they may take some guidance from some senior devotees, or ultimately it's between them and Krishna. So we can't wish away the anartha. It doesn't work like that. So in case for some desires, say we might have been eating meat and we get prasadam, just lose the desire for meat. Some desires go away like that. But if some don't go away, that does not necessarily mean that we have to live lifelong with a feeling of guilt. You just have to deal with it in a realistic way. Okay, this is what I have, and I'll gradually deal with this. And if we are centered on an anartha, either in terms of indulging in it or in terms of rejecting it, we are still centered on that. And from that rejection, again indulgence will happen. Because still the consciousness is caught over there. And when I say transcendence is what we have to come to, now with respect to different anarthas, different, all of us, because we are individual, so we may require different processes for giving up that anartha. Somebody may just immediately hear and renounce, somebody may have to go through it and gradually they renounce. It is for going from the level of indulgence or abstinence to the level of transcendence. How we do that, that's an individual process. And for different, each particular devotee and for each particular conditioning that we have, it will vary from person to person. Does that address the question? Yes.
You were describing your vision for your life, and it seems like this is a big part of your nature. But then when we actually look at what's going on with us, it also seems that our anarthas may be part of our nature. So it kind of comes with baggage, that we get from previous life.
Can you explain how anarthas are a part of our nature?
Well, it's just they're so deep rooted. It's kind of like a reflex. Like you're saying, we got a slanted floor, but that may have actually even started even at a very young age, even before we conceptualized how to live our lives. It was something that seemed to be part of the subtle body that came with us in this lifetime. So I guess my question is, like, we often hear that you can't change your nature, but then this is a big part of what we need to do to advance. So some of them seem a lot more deep-rooted. Some we acquire just being in a particular culture. Like living in Mayapur, living in America is quite different in terms of the accessibility. The different anarthas. You don't get bombarded in India or in Mayapur like you would here. But some of these things just kind of stick with people. It seems like for their lifetime. Maybe it's come from their previous life.
Maybe
this is something you deal with in the Nivritti part. But
totally. So are anarthas also a part of our nature, and isn't that something which would be difficult for us to repress? Krishna says, Nigraha kim karishyasi. Now there is an Indian spiritual or so-called spiritual organization. It says the essence of Bhagavad Gita is Nigraha kim karishyasi. What can repression accomplish? And they recommend indiscriminate indulgence. And they say, by that, you will get one day satiated, and then you will rise to something higher. And now if you see, there's a significant difference. If you look at this Nigraha Kim Karishyasi is 3.34. Krishna is asking, saying, Sabhavajena konte nibaddha svena karmana kartum nechasi mohat karishyasya avashopitat. Sabhavajena konte nibaddha svena, no, that's 18.58, 18.60. Prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyasi. Sadrusham cheshate swasya prakritir jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyasi. In 3.34-35, Krishna talks about nature. And there he says that all living beings act according to their nature. And even the wise act according to their nature. So what can repression accomplish? And then after that he says, next verse is, Shreyan swadharmo viguna paradharma sunushtata. Swadharme nidhanam shreya swadharmo bhayava. Paradharmo bhayava. This act according to your own nature. Because it is better to be destroyed while acting according to one's own nature than to act according to someone else's nature. Because the other nature is acting according to other nature is fearful. Bhayava. Now, if this were an indiscriminate justification for everything within us, whatever is there, then if we consider the flow of the Bhagavad Gita, next verse immediately Arjuna is asking a question that there's something within me which impels me to sinful activity. Takena prayuktoyam papam charati purusha anicchanapi varshneya baladiv niyojita. And Krishna says that is karma, and he says it has to be controlled. In fact, 3.37 to 43 is all talking about how to control karma. So nigraha kim karishyasi is actually applied to swabhava. And swabhava refers to, say, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So when Krishna is telling that nigraha kim karishyasi, Krishna is telling, the point there is, Krishna is telling Arjuna that you are a Kshatriya and you cannot act like a Brahman. So if you try to suppress your Kshatriya nature and act like a Brahmana, that will not work. Nigraha kim karishyasi. Now, within the Kshatriya nature and within the Brahmana nature, so all the four varnas, they will have lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, and envy. And they all have their own ways in which they can express it, in which they can become purified. So Kshatriyas, they can fight wars, they can live in royal opulence, they can have worldly enjoyment, but even that is also with regulation, that is also with responsibility. So the nigraha kim karishyasi is more for the varnik swabhava, the swabhava according to one's varna. It is not for the anarthas. Lust, anger, greed, and pride, illusion, they, Krishna says, we have to fight them. He says, Trividham narkasyedam dwaram nashamatmana. These are gates to hell, and therefore, etir muktah konteya tamo dwara istimhenara acharatya atma shreyas tato yati paramgati. When one comes free from these, this is 16.21-22, when one becomes free from these, then one can attain liberation. So I would say, within our subtle body, there are the anarthas, which are lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, and illusion. There is also our swabhava, which is Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, we cannot change that. So I'll give a crude example for this. So like we can have a Mac computer, we can have a Windows computer, we can have a Linux or whatever other computer we have. That's the basic OS. Now the OS, whatever computer I have, it's very difficult to change that. But what I do with that particular operating system, no, I can go and browse some spiritual sites, I can go and browse some sensual sites. So now the basic operating system that we have, that is like the swabhava. So Krishna is saying a Brahmana cannot become a Kshatriya. Kshatriya cannot become a Brahmana. That cannot be done. What can repression accomplish in that context? Now, beyond that, what we do with that swabhava, that will vary from person to person. And that needs to be regulated. So, for a Brahmana, forgiveness is recommended. For a Kshatriya, punishment of wrongdoers is recommended. Krishna later on in the 18th chapter, when he talks about the swabhava, the prescribed duties of Brahmana and Kshatriya, Shamodana Damastapa Shaucham, Shanti Rarchavam, Shanti. Forgiveness. Prabhupada translation, forgiveness over there. Kshama, Shanti, forgiveness. But then in the next verse, when Krishna is talking about the quality of Kshatriya, he says, Yuddhe Chapya Palayam. He says, fight and don't run away from the fight. What happened to forgiveness? Prabhupada writes, forgiveness can be an individual principle. But at a state level, the government has to punish wrongdoers. The government cannot operate simply on forgiveness. Wrongdoers have to be punished. So Kshatriya is acting, Kshatriya has to fight. So on one side, non-violence, peacefulness, forgiveness is recommended for a Brahmana. But aggressive action is recommended for a Kshatriya. So the specific ways in which lust, anger, greed, now to some extent, when somebody is fighting, there is anger over it. It's regulated, but still anger is there. It's anger channel for dharma. So we cannot, there are different degrees to which the lust, anger, different ways and different degrees to which lust, anger, greed can be regulated in the different varnas. But we all have to regulate. But when Krishna is saying what can repression accomplish, that is talking more about a basic inclination, basic swabhava that we have. That we can't overcome. So yes, we may get, even the lust, anger, greed also come from a previous life, but they can be resisted. How much degree we can resist, that can vary from person to person. And specific way in which we can resist, that can also vary. But the variation is not only possible, that regulation is, to some way or other, it is essential. So, You had one question on it? Okay, we'll have a break after this question. Fisher, we can discuss after the next session. Yeah, this question.
You mentioned the enemies, lust, anger, greed, and so forth. Are emotions plus their objects or things? So I'm not quite understanding what you mean by an object or a thing as far as anger and lust.
Okay, yeah. So they said that lust, anger, greed are objects or things. What does it actually mean? Okay. Let me put it this way. I work on computers. I'll give a software example. Say there is some site when there is this particular site which is there. If I visit that site, say there is a site with sensual images, I go and visit that site, I get agitated. So that is I who am doing that. So it is my decision, my intention which I am doing. But when we visit a particular site, that gets stored in the browser. It gets stored in the software. And the next time, say, if I visit a particular news site, then say if I repeatedly, as soon as I type now I want to go to ISKCON News now. But in the past, if I got to India News so many times, then as soon as I type it will give autocomplete as India News. And if I'm not careful, it will just go there automatically. So there is, so on one side, going to that, on one extreme, we could say that going to that site is my decision. But on another side, that decision creates a history in my computer, a bookmark or a record, by which I next time automatically go to that site. So like that, when I feel angry, that's an emotion that I experience. But along with the emotion that I experience, it creates like a setting. Next time, anger becomes more easy for me. Getting angry becomes more natural for me. So, for example, if somebody has never worked as a butcher, first time they were going to kill an animal. So, live animal, how can I kill? How can I kill this animal? When they kill once, twice, thrice, 5 times, 10 times, they just become desensitized after that. Once I was going in Bengal and I was seeing that there is kids about 8-10 years old, they're just chatting with each other and lopping off the neck of chickens. Like we may cut sabji, they're cutting like that. Become completely nonchalant. So when we keep doing a particular activity, that gets we could say that gets stored like a setting. So that stored setting is what I mean, it's an object. So when that stored setting is there, the relapse or the indulgence becomes not only easier, it almost becomes like inevitable. You have to consciously check it. Otherwise, it will become like a default reaction that comes. Does that address the question? So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. We can have over 15 minute break.
10 minutes.
10 minutes break. Thank you.
So I wanted to speak to you. I have my computer. I built my computer in the car, an outreach magazine, and I wanted to show because I wanted to take 2 of the articles you've done. One from ATG, The Way of Dharma. That's the free will versus predestination. That article. And then the other one was on near-death experience. And but I started off with.
Can we do now?
Not possible.
Does it expand that for you? Yeah, I mean, this is fine as long as it's centered. So when he starts, I will send it. Okay. Put it in pause or something. Is it over here?
Can you pause it first?
Oh, it's not paused now?
But then the rest Yeah. So one thing about
I think we should stop it and start it.
There is some question also.
Should we do finish or?